The day my 6-year-old son sat in the middle of our driveway, silently lining up toy trucks with tears in his eyes, was the day I realized something had to break. And it wasn't going to be my son. It was going to be Karen, HOA president, full-time tyrant, part-time villain, in yoga pants, and the woman who had just banned my autistic son's sensory toys from our front yard because they disrupted neighborhood harmony. If you've ever dealt with an HOA dictator who hides behind rules while crushing human decency, you know exactly the kind of storm you're about to step into. But before I show you how I turned the internet against our own suburban queenpin, do me one favor. If you're watching this while hiding from your HOA group chat, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear is the kind of story they'll wish stayed buried. My name is Danny Ramirez, single mom, full-time freelance editor, formerly quiet resident of the Evergreen Oaks community, and mom to Leo, my brave, beautiful, brilliant little boy. Leo was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at age 3. And since then, our world has been built around structure, understanding, and things that help Leo feel safe. One of those things? Toy trucks. But not just any toy trucks. Leo has a very specific routine. Every morning, he lines them up on our front walkway. He counts them, taps them 3 times, then makes a little engine sound for each one. It takes about 15 minutes. And after that, he's calm, happy, regulated. It's his anchor before school, his routine, his world, until Karen decided it didn't fit hers. Let me introduce her properly. Karen Delaney, HOA president of Evergreen Oaks for 5 years running. Drives a white Tesla with T1DYST on the plate. Keeps a Bluetooth headset in at all times, whether she's on a call or not. The kind of woman who files noise complaints because your wind chimes are spiritually aggressive. We first crossed paths the week I moved in. Leo was lining up trucks while I watered the lawn. Karen marched up in a pastel linen set and said, "Excuse me, are these toys going to be a regular thing?" I laughed. "Yeah, every morning. My son loves his routine." She didn't laugh back. Instead, she tilted her head like she was analyzing a stain. "Well, just be mindful of visual clutter. It reflects on the community." I bit my tongue. I'd been here for 72 hours. For a while, I tried to play nice. I made sure the toys were picked up by 8:30 every morning. I didn't leave chalk drawings or bikes out overnight. I even painted our mailbox beige because the HOA handbook said earth tones foster unity. But Karen didn't want unity. She wanted control. And 3 months later, it came in the form of an email. Subject: Toys in public view. Official notice. Ms. Ramirez, we've received multiple concerns regarding toy clutter visible from the street. As per Section 4.3.2 of the Evergreen Oaks HOA agreement, personal items are not to remain in common view beyond temporary recreational use. Please ensure all toys are stored out of sight by 7 a.m. effective immediately. Regards, Karen Delaney, HOA president. I stared at the screen for a full minute. 7 a.m.? Leo's routine didn't even start until 7:15. This wasn't about clutter. This was about Karen trying to erase what she didn't understand. I responded politely, explained Leo's diagnosis, that the toys were part of a medical coping mechanism, that we never left them out all day, that we cleaned up like clockwork. Her response? We all have our struggles. But rules are rules. Exceptions lead to chaos. Chaos. That's what she called my son's therapy. I was shaking, but I wasn't surprised. Karen was the kind of person who said, "We all have challenges," right before steamrolling yours. So I tried one more time, asked to meet in person, talk face to face, find a compromise. She agreed. We met on a Friday morning. I brought Leo, hoping she'd see the little boy behind the trucks. She didn't. She watched him silently line up his vehicles, tapped them gently, make the little engine sounds with a quiet smile. Then she turned to me and said, "Have you considered doing this inside?" I blinked. It's part of his routine. He likes the open space. The sun helps him stay calm. She frowned. But it makes the neighborhood look messy. My mouth opened, then closed. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? This wasn't about compliance. It was about contempt. She didn't want Leo to move his trucks. She wanted him to disappear from view. That afternoon, I got a formal violation letter, a $100 fine, and a threat. If I didn't comply, the HOA would escalate the matter to legal arbitration. I stared at it. Then I stared at Leo, laughing, spinning in the yard, his trucks lined up like a parade of peace. And something inside me snapped. If she wanted war, I'd bring her a battlefield the whole world could see. So I opened my laptop, created a post, and titled it, "My HOA president just banned my autistic son's therapy routine because it looks messy." I hit post. Within 5 minutes, the story had 12 shares. By the end of the hour, over 300. By lunchtime, thousands. It was like striking a nerve that had been waiting, begging to be hit. Parents flooded the comments. Autism advocates. Special ed teachers. Neurodivergent adults who remembered what it was like to be punished for being weird. Even people with no ties to the disability community were saying the same thing. This is disgusting. How can she do that? Name and shame her. Seriously, I didn't even have to. Someone zoomed in on the violation letter I'd posted. Saw her signature, Karen Delaney, HOA president. And just like that, she became a villain on the internet. Karen didn't respond right away. I imagine she didn't know. But by the end of the day, someone had created a Facebook page titled, "Let Leo Play." It gained 4,000 followers in 24 hours. People started mailing toy trucks to our house. Some hand-painted with names like Freedom, Justice, and Clutter This. A local artist even offered to sculpt a life-size toy truck installation for our front lawn. And then came the news stations. The local morning anchor emailed me directly, then a producer from a national daytime talk show, and then a call from my old high school friend who now worked at a disability rights nonprofit. All of them said the same thing. This story matters. And it did. But not just for me and Leo. It mattered because people were sick of quiet oppression wearing a smile and a clipboard. That night, I got a knock on the door. I opened it to see Karen, hair tighter than usual, lipstick darker, holding a rolled-up document like it was a scroll of truth. "Ms. Ramirez," she began stiffly, "I've been made aware of some misleading statements circulating online." "Hi, Karen," I said flatly. "Want to come in and see the mountain of trucks people sent us?" Her eyes twitched. "I'd like to clarify that this HOA operates by majority vote. The violation notice was based on collective concern, not personal bias." "Right. So everyone's terrified of a few Hot Wheels." She exhaled sharply. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said. "You know what's dramatic? Threatening legal action over a child lining up his toys. That's dramatic." She tried again. "I'm here to offer a resolution. If you publicly clarify that your post was exaggerated, we'll waive the fine and consider your appeal at the next board meeting." That's when I smiled. "Oh, I'm not appealing anything. I'm exposing it." She narrowed her eyes. "You're making a mistake." I took a step forward. "So did you, Karen." The next morning, a petition went viral. "Remove Karen Delaney as HOA president immediately," backed by 6,000 signatures in 48 hours. It wasn't just Evergreen Oaks residents anymore. The world was watching. And Karen? She was spiraling. Someone leaked internal HOA emails showing her instructing board members to preserve neighborhood image by discouraging disruptive behavior, even if legally gray. Legally gray. That's how she described my son's morning therapy routine. The comments section was brutal. "This woman needs to be banned from any position of power. Hope she enjoys becoming a meme. Anyone got her real estate license number? Let's report her." I didn't ask for vengeance. I didn't beg for justice. But the internet came with both. And Karen? She snapped. I got a certified letter delivered to my home. She claimed my social media posts had caused her irreparable emotional harm and demanded I remove it immediately or face legal action for defamation. Angela, my attorney friend who'd helped in the past, laughed so hard over the phone I thought she dropped her coffee. "This isn't defamation," she said. "This is documentation." We wrote back with a very simple response. Our son's rights are not negotiable. You don't get to bury abuse with legal threats. See you in public opinion. By day 5, the story had gone full-on national. Daytime hosts discussed it on TV. Celebrities tweeted #LetLeoPlay. One NFL player posted a video of his daughter lining up her own toy trucks on the porch with the caption, "We're with you, Leo." And then, right on cue, Karen resigned. The HOA sent out a pale little letter. After 5 years of dedicated service, Ms. Delaney is stepping down to focus on personal matters. Personal matters like being dragged by 40,000 strangers. But I wasn't done, because the problem wasn't just Karen. It was a system that let her exist quietly, comfortably, with rules so vague they could be weaponized against anyone different. So I joined a coalition of parents, lawyers, and advocates drafting model legislation for HOA reform, specifically mandatory training in ADA compliance, clear exceptions for disability accommodations, and penalties for retaliatory enforcement. We named the first draft the Leo Act. Leo, he never knew the world was on fire. He just kept lining up his trucks, tapping them gently, making little sounds with his lips. But that week, I noticed something new. For the first time ever, other kids came to join him. They brought their own trucks, lined them up next to his, copied the taps, and Leo didn't stop them. He looked up at me, nodded once, and went back to counting. That was his way of saying, "This is mine, and now it's safe." 3 days after Karen resigned, a small package arrived at our door. Inside was a yellow toy truck. On the side, written in permanent marker, were the words, "Keep driving forward, Leo." Maya, age 7, Austin, Texas. That one hit me hard. Because by then, Leo's story wasn't just about our neighborhood or one corrupt HOA. It had become a movement. Parents from across the country were emailing us. Some shared photos of their kids creating their own morning routines. Others sent letters saying they finally had the courage to speak up against their HOA's overreach. One woman said she printed our story and taped it to her HOA's clubhouse door. "Because I don't have a slide like Jordan," she wrote, "but I have a printer and petty rage." The momentum kept growing. The Evergreen Oaks board tried to settle things quietly. After Karen's resignation, they suspended all outstanding fines, including mine, and offered to review past decisions for clarity and fairness. It was nice PR speak, but the damage was done. Residents who had kept their heads down for years finally started talking. One family admitted they were fined for letting their teenage son practice violin on the porch. Another said they removed their lawn chairs permanently because Karen once called them a visual eyesore. Even the retired couple down the street, quiet as church mice, confessed they'd been scared to install a grab rail for their front steps because Karen didn't like metal fixtures. What Karen had ruled with wasn't strength. It was silence. And now, silence was broken. Safra, the kind-hearted neighbor who helped us during the slide debacle, stepped up as interim HOA president. Her first act? The Leo Clause, a new addition to the HOA guidelines that read, "Residents who require therapeutic tools, toys, or accommodations, visible or otherwise, shall be fully permitted to use them in common view without fear of citation, fine, or discrimination." It was voted in unanimously. We printed out a copy and taped it next to Leo's lineup spot. He didn't understand the words. But when I pointed to it and said, "That means your trucks are safe," he nodded and said, "Okay," and kept lining them up one by one. Meanwhile, the advocacy work expanded. Angela and I teamed up with a local state rep who had a neurodivergent nephew. She introduced our draft policy, the Leo Act, to the city council. The core ideas? Mandatory HOA training in disability rights. Clear legal exceptions for sensory and therapeutic accommodations. Penalties for retaliation or citation abuse. It wasn't just about ramps or toys. It was about protection, dignity, freedom. And within a month, 3 neighboring counties had agreed to pilot the policy. The story had lit a fire. But Karen wasn't gone for good. Of course she wasn't. We heard whispers. She was trying to run for office in another county. Small town council seat. New audience. Fresh chance to start over without the internet mob. Except people remembered. One local blogger caught wind and reposted her entire HOA history, complete with screen grabs of the violation letter she sent me. The comments were instant. The truck lady? No thanks. Protect your kids. Vote literally anyone else. Hashtag let Leo play lives on. She lost by a landslide. Back at home, Leo's world stayed simple. He never knew about the laws or the blogs or the hashtags. He just knew he could line up his trucks in peace. And the neighbors, they didn't just accept it. They embraced it. One morning, I came outside to see the Henderson twins, age 10, adding their own toy dinosaurs to Leo's row. I started to step in, but Leo beat me to it. He looked at them, studied their setup, then gently moved one dino half an inch to the left, gave it a tap, and kept going. He had rules. They followed, and just like that, the morning routine had new members. Later that week, a news crew stopped by for a follow-up story. They interviewed Leo, mostly they watched. They filmed as he placed his trucks with focus and calm. They filmed the neighbors waving. They filmed the new sign Safra had installed in the front garden. Neurodiversity is not clutter, it's community. It made the evening news, then a viral reel, then a short documentary on suburban advocacy. And suddenly, my little boy's quiet world had become a blueprint. By month 3, Leo's truck lineup had its own time slot. I'm not kidding. Neighbors adjusted their morning walks to pass our house around 7:30. People brought their coffee. One woman, retired art teacher, painted a canvas of Leo and his trucks titled, Order and Joy. Someone even started a TikTok account at Trucks of Leo. It was just simple, quiet videos of him tapping and placing each toy in sequence. No commentary, no flashy edits, just peace. And somehow, that peace drew people in. Thousands followed. Some said the videos helped their kids fall asleep. Others said watching Leo helped them start their day with calm. And some admitted, quietly, that they'd once been a Karen, but now they saw the world differently. Meanwhile, Evergreen Oaks was changing. Safra and the newly reformed board were rewriting everything. Gone were the nitpicky citation rules. Gone were the no visible toys and no porch cushions over 4 inches thick clauses. Gone were the late-night random inspections. In their place, a resident review board for appeals, quarterly community input sessions, and a new section in the HOA handbook titled, Making Space for the Unseen, A Guide to Inclusive Living. The intro paragraph? Every home tells a story. Let's make sure none of them are silenced. One Sunday, I caught Karen's old friend Marla standing across the street watching Leo line up his trucks. She hadn't said a word to me since the post went viral. She was one of Karen's biggest offenders. But that morning, she crossed the road. She knelt beside Leo, watching in silence as he adjusted a fire truck. Then she whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. I didn't understand. I do now. I didn't say anything, just nodded, because that was the whole point. We decided to take the advocacy further. Angela, our civil rights attorney and all-around warrior, helped me and 3 other parents file a citizens' motion to present the Leo Act statewide. It wasn't just about HOA rules anymore. It was about training, accountability, and education at every level, from school boards to zoning committees to city planners. We hosted listening sessions, took feedback, added real-life stories, including ours, to the proposal package. When we finally stood before the state committee, I spoke with Leo's photo in my hand. This bill isn't about toys. It's about the space we allow each other to live, to heal, to be different. It passed through the first reading with unanimous support. That night we celebrated. We ordered pizza, invited neighbors, turned the truck lineup spot into a makeshift gallery of all the toys people had mailed us from around the country. Dad brought out the old projector and played cartoons on the side of the garage. The twins brought glow sticks. Leo, he just lined up trucks under the porch light, tapping away while 30 people cheered him on. No fear, no judgment, no HOA fines in the mailbox, just freedom. The kind you don't always notice until someone tries to take it. Karen, by the way, still quiet. She moved out of state. Last I heard, she was trying to start a community order consulting firm for suburban developers. But the internet has a memory. Every time she tried to rebrand, someone reposted her story. She may have escaped Evergreen Oaks, but she never escaped the lesson. One morning, I asked Leo if he wanted to try lining up his trucks in the backyard for a change. He looked up at me, confused. Why? No reason, I said. You can do it anywhere now, even inside if you want. He frowned, shook his head. No, trucks go here. And he went right back to work, placing, tapping, whispering his little engine sounds. He didn't care that a whole movement had started in this spot. He didn't care that people across the country were watching. He just wanted his space, his routine, his peace. And now, finally, he had it. By the time spring rolled around, the mayor's office reached out. Yeah, the mayor. They wanted to recognize Leo's contribution to neighborhood equity and disability inclusion. At first, I laughed. The idea of Leo accepting a plaque in front of a crowd felt impossible. He doesn't do well with loud noises or applause. Doesn't like unfamiliar environments. But then they said this. We don't want to honor Leo for a moment. We want to build something permanent with his name on it. They proposed creating the city's first inclusive play zone based on sensory-friendly design. A park where kids like Leo could feel safe. Where toy trucks and spinning wheels weren't just tolerated, they were celebrated. They want to call it Leo's Lineup Lane. The space was modest, just a repurposed corner of a local park. But we worked with designers, therapists, and autistic kids themselves to shape it. A smooth pathway with color markings for truck lining and toy organization. A tactile wall with different textures and pressure panels. Sound-dampened zones with soft seating and low-light tents. And a free play table filled with donated sensory toys from around the country. Leo didn't care about the name or the funding. He just liked the idea that he could line up his trucks somewhere else when he wanted to. And when we told him it would be open to other kids like him, he paused, then quietly said, Okay, they can line up too. The grand opening was surreal. There were speeches, short ones, food trucks, face paint, and on the wall near the entrance, someone painted a mural of a little boy crouched over a lineup of rainbow-colored trucks. Above it was a quote, Routine isn't boring. Routine is bravery wearing wheels. I stood there staring at it longer than I meant to, because I remember the first time Karen walked up our driveway with that fake grin and clipboard. I remembered how small I felt, how scared I was, how quickly power can turn into silence when you don't push back. And now, my son had a park named after him. Meanwhile, Evergreen Oaks had changed more than anyone imagined. There were now monthly, open driveway days where kids were encouraged to display chalk art, toy setups, or whatever made them feel like themselves. HOA meetings were live streamed for transparency. SAFRA formed a youth council to give teens a voice in neighborhood events. And every house received a new welcome packet with one highlighted rule. You do not have to apologize for needing something different. Some rolled their eyes. Most smiled. But everyone remembered where it started. One evening, SAFRA hosted a porch talk with new residents. A young couple had just moved in with their 3-year-old daughter, recently diagnosed on the spectrum. They looked tired, nervous, like we did once. Afterward, they pulled me aside. We heard the stories before we moved here. The wife said, We weren't sure if they were true. I nodded. Most of them are. They glanced over at Leo, tapping a toy gently against a railing, humming to himself. Thank you, the dad said, for making it easier for people like us. I didn't say anything, because I didn't need to. Leo said it all, without ever saying a word. Karen didn't attend the park opening, but we heard from a former friend of hers that she watched the news report and cried. Some people took that as guilt. Others called it shame. I didn't care what it was, because forgiveness wasn't mine to give. It belonged to Leo. And he'd already moved on. He was too busy teaching another kid at the park how to line up red trucks before blue ones. Priorities. That night, I stood on our porch with Leo. I asked him, "Do you remember when your trucks got taken away?" He blinked, thought for a second, then shook his head. "No, I remember Slide." I laughed. "That's the part you remember?" "Yeah," he nodded. "Slide is funny." It was. And maybe that's the point. The worst parts fade. The best ones stay. And sometimes when someone tries to tear your world apart, all you have to do is hand them the internet and let them trip on their own rules. The thing about change, you never really know it's happening until you look back. 1 year ago, I was sitting at my kitchen table crying over a $100 violation letter. Today, I was sitting across from 3 state representatives as they asked, "What's the best way to stop HOA abuse before it starts?" I glanced at the folder in front of me. Our final draft of the Leo Act, revised, tightened, polished after months of community feedback and expert reviews. I didn't plan to become an advocate. I just wanted my son to line up his trucks in peace. But when that small right was threatened, it cracked open everything wrong about how power gets used in communities like mine. And now, the bill that was born from Leo's driveway was on its way to becoming state law. Meanwhile, back in Evergreen Oaks, life kept moving beautifully. Leo's morning routine had evolved. He still lined up his trucks, still tapped them gently, but now he had friends. Other kids on the spectrum. Some just curious, some shy. And Leo, my quiet, anxious, order-loving boy, had become an unlikely host. He didn't talk much, but he had rules. Red trucks before blue. Fire engines go in the middle. 3 taps per truck. No skipping. And the kids followed, not out of obedience, out of respect. Because somehow, Leo had become a leader. The HOA, now under fully new leadership, hosted a day of difference every quarter. Not just for autism awareness, but for every kind of inclusion. One family hosted a sign language story time. Another showcased adaptive gardening tools for elderly residents. Someone even created a temporary wheelchair maze for kids to experience accessibility challenges firsthand. And every event ended the same way, with toy truck races at Leo's Lane, the sensory park now considered a city model. That's when we got a letter from a community in Florida. Their HOA had started citing a family for excessive toy use after their son, also autistic, lined up as plush animals by the community pool. The mom found our story online. She followed the links, read the policy, watched the videos. Then she walked into her HOA's next meeting, slammed a binder on the table, and said, "You can find me, or you can read what happened to Karen Delaney." They dropped the citation. 2 weeks later, they adopted their own version of the Leo Clause. It started happening everywhere. HOAs in Texas, Oregon, Ohio, Virginia. People printing our story and using it as a weapon against silence. Some call me a hero, but I'm not. I'm just a mom with a camera and a Wi-Fi signal and a kid who liked trucks. Leo never set out to change the world. He just wanted order in a space that didn't always make sense. Turns out, a lot of us want that too. One afternoon, Safra stopped by with a cardboard box. "From the board," she smiled. "And for me." Inside, a gold-painted toy truck, mounted on a wooden base. Engraved plaque. "To Leo, for showing us that different isn't scary, just misunderstood." Leo turned it over in his hands, looked at it, tapped it, then placed it gently at the front of his morning lineup. It became truck number 1. The leader of the pack. Karen never reached out, never apologized, never acknowledged what happened. And that's okay, because this story was never about getting her back. It was about taking back what mattered. For Leo, for me, for the thousands who watched silently while their HOA turned community into compliance. It's not just about ramps or toys or trucks. It's about dignity. And the truth is, when you stand up for that, even just once, you give other people permission to do the same. The day Leo received a city medal was the only time he ever looked uncomfortable around applause. They kept it short, thankfully. The mayor handed him a certificate, a small, weighted medallion hung from a red ribbon. Leo blinked at it like it was a strange new toy. Then, in front of 3 news cameras, He turned to the mayor and asked quietly, "Can I go home now?" The crowd laughed softly, and Leo went straight back to his trucks. But while he lined them up outside City Hall, I realized something. He had no idea he'd become a symbol, a local hero, a spark for reform in dozens of states. And that's what made it all the more powerful. Leo never changed himself to make others comfortable. The world learned how to move around him. The next morning, we were back in our neighborhood. Regular day. Same porch. Same lineup. Except now, the trucks were never alone. Sometimes it was one kid. Sometimes four. Sometimes it was a parent kneeling beside them, watching silently as Leo led the rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't chaos. It was order. His order. Accepted, respected, and imitated. Not for trend, but for truth. We launched a small nonprofit a few weeks later. Angela helped with the structure. It was called Line Up Together. Our mission? To provide micro-grants for families dealing with HOA discrimination, so they could build ramps, add sensory gardens, or fight unjust citations with legal aid. First month, we funded 11 families. By the third month, 68. One woman in Arizona emailed us after receiving her grant to install a sand-sifting station for her nonverbal son. She ended her message with, "Leo gave us a voice, even if my son doesn't have one." Karen tried to scrub her online reputation. She changed her name slightly, started applying to consulting jobs out of state. One PR firm even accepted her until someone found the HOA videos and sent them directly to the CEO. She was quietly removed within 48 hours. Eventually, she deleted every trace of her public presence. And while I could have gloated, I didn't, because we were already so far beyond her. Our driveway had become a pilgrimage. Families stopped by on road trips just to let their kids line up toys beside Leo. We kept a basket near the sidewalk filled with extras, trucks, trains, mini diggers, so no child felt left out. One afternoon, Leo looked up at me after 2 boys left their trucks behind. "Why?" he asked. "They're gifts," I told him. "They want to share your space." He considered that, then nodded once, solemnly, like a little general accepting an alliance. The truck videos on TikTok pass 1 million followers. A teacher used them in her classroom to show how routines bring calm. A therapist wrote an article about how Leo's videos helped clients understand regulation. A father of twins with autism messaged us, saying, "For the first time, my boys feel like someone out there is just like them." And Leo, he never cared about the numbers. But he did care that one of the trucks came in purple, his favorite color. He added it to the middle of the line, then tapped it 4 times, which broke every rule. When I raised my eyebrow, he grinned. "Special truck," he whispered. That night, I stood on the porch long after Leo had gone inside. The neighborhood was quiet again, but not afraid. And I thought back to the beginning. The first moment I saw Karen walking up my driveway, the first moment I felt that creeping doubt. Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm asking too much. But I wasn't, and neither are you. If you're watching this and you're stuck in a neighborhood where you're scared to be yourself, or scared to let your kids be themselves, listen closely. You're not the problem. The people trying to silence you are. Stand your ground. Tell your story. Post it if you have to. Expose the clipboard tyrants who mistake rules for righteousness. Because if they can find a 6-year-old for playing with toy trucks, then they've already lost the plot. 1 year to the day after Karen banned Leo's trucks, we held a celebration in our front yard. No balloons, no speeches, no media, just a table with lemonade, a folding chair for each neighbor, and a freshly painted sign over the driveway. Leo's lane, established by peace, protected by community. Leo was there, of course, lining up his trucks, not for the camera, not for the news, not for a movement, just for himself. He hummed quietly as he worked, occasionally adjusting a truck that had drifted a few degrees. Kids from the neighborhood watched him like students in a quiet dojo. One tapped the wrong number of times. Leo paused, looked up, then moved the truck gently, tapped twice, and gave the kid a thumbs up. The boy smiled like he'd been knighted. Later that afternoon, I stood beside the mural on our garage wall. It showed Leo crouched over his lineup, a bright yellow sun overhead, and a parade of trucks stretching into the distance. Hidden in the sky, if you looked close, were the names of all the kids who had donated toys to our community. Over 1,200 names. Saffra walked up behind me, holding a lemonade. "You ever think we'd end up here?" she asked. "Not in a million years." I laughed. "I thought we'd move out. Run away." "I almost did." She nodded. "I almost resigned," she said. "Before it all. Karen made me feel like I didn't belong in the neighborhood I helped build." We stood in silence for a moment. Then she smiled. "Now I tell every board member, if your rules don't make room for people, they're not rules. They're weapons." That night, I put Leo to bed and came back outside. The street was quiet again, but it didn't feel like fear anymore. It felt like peace. Not the peace that comes from silence. The peace that comes from knowing you were heard. The peace that comes from watching a boy with a box of toy trucks teach a gated community the meaning of grace. We still get letters. One came last week from a woman in Nevada. They tried to ban my daughter's trampoline. Said it was unsightly. I printed your story and brought it to the next board meeting. Now we have 3 trampolines and a chair swing next door. Thank you, Leo. Another from an older man in Maine. I used to be a Karen. Not in name, but in action. I fined a neighbor once for leaving a walker outside. I still think about that. I'm trying to do better now. And then, from a 9-year-old girl in Oregon, I have a brother like Leo. Now I line up trucks with him, too. We call it Leo time. I never wanted my son to be famous. I only wanted him to be safe, to have his routine, to be seen not as a disruption, but as a person. And somewhere along the way, the world finally agreed. As the last neighbors left and the sun dropped behind the houses, Leo tugged on my sleeve. He looked at the trucks, looked at the empty street. "More kids tomorrow?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "Probably." He nodded. "Okay." Then he turned and added one more truck to the end of the line, took a step back, and smiled. If you're watching this and wondering whether your voice matters, let this be your proof. You don't need power, or money, or 1,000 followers. You just need to speak. Because somewhere out there's a kid with a truck, a crayon, a song, a fidget spinner, a need, and all they're waiting for is your voice to clear the way. So speak. Push back. Make space. And never apologize for the way your love shows up, because the moment you do, you've already changed the world. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you even a little, consider hitting subscribe so we can keep telling the stories others try to silence. And if your HOA has a Karen, you know what to do. Danny and Leo,